Venezuela ambushed a U.S. carrier at Mach 0.90 and lost the fight without weapons. This isn't hype. 3 Su-30s dove from 2,000 feet, cut angle, closing to 4 nautical miles of the USS George Washington. The U.S. didn't flinch, gravely arced into the cutoff line. A Seahawk watched every bank and burner. SPY one-tracked, CIWS quiet. We'll walk you through the second-by-second signaling that forced the slowdown. 0.90, 0.78, 0.72, and the east-southeast drift away. See how disciplined constancy and airspace law turned a near crisis into a controlled stand-down. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Why dive at all when the 4-mile circle around a carrier group is a known hard line? Because a high-speed cut-angle run is a message that uses motion instead of words. 3 Su-30s at 2,000 feet on the deck of humid mid-Caribbean air ran Mach 0.90 with the left-wing signal flag up. That flag, old school but effective, said, "We assert," without a single radio click. Their vector wasn't a casual pass. It pointed across the bow to force a choice. Yield a lane or risk a close intercept with cameras rolling and the narrative tilted toward Caracas. As they rolled in, their lead nosed down a few degrees, a small but loaded gesture. Afterburners licked, fuel flow spiked, and closure time shrank. The carrier group held course and speed. No weave, no heelover. Nothing the Su-30 flight could call a deviation. That's where the tension settles. The fighters trading altitude and fuel to buy leverage, while the formation they want to move refuses to pay. USS gravely answered with motion that didn't speak the language of panic. The destroyer slid into a quiet pivot, tracing an arc toward the projected cutoff line. It's a thief's move. Take position, not the spotlight. The bow didn't point at the jets. It slipped into the corridor those jets needed to make their crossing look dominant. If the Su-30s wanted the photo, they now needed to thread a ship's bow and the carrier's lane and do it without falling inside the gray 4 nautical mile envelope. Overhead, the MH-60R Seahawk settled into steady orbits. No showy dips, no spotlight sweep. The crew put glass on the details that matter: wing bank angles, burner bloom, tailpipe shimmer, and exhaust flicker from the lead's right engine. Stabilized optics catch intent before radios do. A helo can watch for the first twitch toward a hard turn and call a vector that boxes it out. That surveillance is a break. No yelling, just proof. Gravely's Aegis spine kept the wide scan picture alive. SPY-1 tracked the formation through clean, passive lines. The doctrine in play was simple: eyes open, weapons sheathed, fire control stayed cold. CIWS sat silent. No illumination spike, no missile rails swinging to face. That restraint matters. It denies the other side their favorite frame. We escalated because they lit us, and locks the story to math and rules. On the open channel, only one phrase crossed the water: maintain safe separation. No threat edge, just legal phrasing that turns the international air rules into a shield. It also becomes a test. If the jets break that standard, they own the breach on record. Caracas can call it assertion. Washington answers with timestamps and coordinates. This is where caution becomes consequence. 4 nautical miles is not a treaty line, but in this game it behaves like one. A sudden break turn inside that bubble compels a hard counter, and both sides know how fast that spiral can tighten. The Venezuelan flight kept their noses low, still pressing, but every second turned the geometry against them. Gravely's arc took the crossing space. The Seahawk's eyes drew a box in the air. The carrier never ceded a yard. So what triggered the dive in the first place? Coercive signaling to drag a carrier group into a visible lane change. The plan hinged on forcing a reaction they could spin. It failed because the destroyer's quiet pivot erased the stage and the helo's optics removed ambiguity. The gambit lost its payoff. The line held. Now watch how that same silent pressure turns a hot run into a slow drift as the speed unwinds from Mach 0.90 to 0.78 and the formation starts to loosen. They eased off because the edge got sharper, not softer. At Mach 0.90, the formation still held the cut, but the geometry stopped paying dividends. The clock ran, the angles narrowed, and the payoff lane closed. The lead throttled back to Mach 0.78, then 0.72, bank softened a few degrees, and the vector drifted east-southeast. Wingmen widened the spacing. That looseness tells you the pilots were no longer selling a crossing shot, they were managing risk. Every small change pointed the same way. The run had become a liability inside a 4-mile neighborhood where surprises draw hard counters. What made restraint bite harder than a warning? The destroyer never flashed a threat. No missiles came live, no flares punched, no bridge lights telegraphed a lurch. Instead, the tracking stayed constant and the position stayed superior. That hurts because it removes the excuse to escalate. When the other side won't hand you a spike on the scope or a bark on the radio, you own every aggressive twitch you make. The Venezuelan pilots saw a board that could punish a single misstep and offer them no headline to hide behind. Soft coercion did the rest. Gravely's bow settled on the cutoff line the jets needed, a line that had looked open a minute earlier. The MH-60R held a vertical stack and never lost visual control, riding stable orbits with optics that catch a half degree of bank and a flicker of burner. SPY-1 plotted micro-movements in clean cadence, keeping the picture stitched without lighting a fuse. The carrier stayed stone steady, course and speed locked. That combination boxed the formation without touching it. If they pressed, they would have to thread a gap now defined by a destroyer's hull, a helo's eyes, and radar tracks that recorded every nudge. Then there's the language mismatch that matters. The left-wing flag was Caracas saying, "We assert." Washington answered with nothing but corridor discipline and recorded coordinates. No commentary, no color, only the rules they could point to later. In this kind of standoff, documentation beats declarations. The side that sticks to lawful lanes gets the benefit of doubt if things snap. The jet crews felt that. They read the legal air as clearly as the tactical air. Deterrence here is math wrapped in posture. At 4 nautical miles, any unpredictable break, toward the hull, toward the helo, or across the bow, turns into a decision point for the U.S. A hard response doesn't need to be announced if the geometry dictates it. The Su-30s knew the envelope and started bleeding speed to build options, not glory. They traded energy for time because time meant choices that didn't involve crossing a red line on a public recording. Add the strategic layer. Ground-based SAMS, sponsored by friends back home, don't set the rules over blue water. Out here, the owner of the sensors, the lanes, and the legal framing writes the tempo. The U.S. rode it with calm. The lead slid to Mach 0.78. Wingmen drifted a few wingspans wider. Burners cooled. No one said retreat, but the formation said it anyway. That was the hinge. The cutoff vector faded, the nose angles eased, and the east-southeast drift took hold. The U.S. never wavered. Course and speed remained glued. Airspace control held because the destroyer took the angle, the Seahawk removed uncertainty, and the radar kept the record. That is how Gravely countered without firing a shot, by owning the place where a mistake would be expensive and refusing to supply a spark. Clean ending, clear lesson. Presence beats noise, and constancy wins when speed runs out of room. Doing less won the day. Holding course, holding law, holding the line turned speed into silence. The carrier's steadiness forced the faster jet to become the quieter one. Presence, not volume, shaped the outcome, and the rules did the heavy lifting. If you want more minute-by-minute breakdowns of near crises that end without a shot, tell us which standoff to decode next. Name the corridor, the coastline, or the airspace, and we'll build the map. Then, next time, we'll show how a single helo orbit can collapse an intercept plan before the first radio call lands, and why that orbit denies options one circle at a time.